Hello mortals, I am the booktube goddess zapping and blessing books so you don't have to. I was tagged by Grace, the beautiful bookworm, to celebrate fall. Not that type of fall, but the autumn fall, or the finally fall book tag. Now, I am really behind in answering tags, but the one great thing about tags is you don't have to rush and do them, unless they are seasonal book tags. Now, I have no idea who made this tag because the video is marked private. Does that seem suspicious to you? Why would you put on private a tag video? Sounds a little suspicious, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, I printed out the prompts. The first one is, in fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. Well, how about Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin? This was written as a serialized story published in the San Francisco Chronicle in the 1970s, just like Dickens published his novels in the Pickwick Papers. Now, there is something about serialized novels that are published in serial versions that really makes each chapter pop, because obviously each chapter does have to pop. And you find this in some of the early science fiction novels that did the same thing. Like Edgar Rice Burroughs was often published as a serial. What I love about Tales of the City is how San Francisco is brought to life. It's such a vivid setting. You really get a feel of San Francisco in the 70s, and if you read his later novels through the 80s and 90s and to present day. Now, it helps that I also lived in San Francisco, only I lived there in the 90s rather than the 70s, but I recognize a lot of the aspects that Armistead Maupin writes about concerning San Francisco. It's really a delightful story about the main character, Mary Ann Singleton, who moves to San Francisco from Ohio, and she is really a fish out of water. She's naive, she's very young, she hasn't been exposed to the gay subculture or marijuana or a lot of the other crazy aspects that San Francisco is known for in the 70s. If you haven't read it, I suggest you do, because it is a real modern American classic. And the BBC series is pretty darn well done too. Prompt 2. Nature is beautiful, but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written, but also deals with a heavy topic like loss or grief. Well, I picked the novel Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is beautifully written, in my opinion, and dealing in a very heavy subject matter. Kazuo Ishiguro was born in Japan, but he immigrated to Britain when he was 5 years old. And he also won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Now, this is a dystopian novel set in the near future. And I don't want to say too much about the plot, because obviously it's better to experience it as it unfolds rather than being told about it beforehand. I will say a lot of the novel is told in flashback, as Kathy recalls growing up as a young girl in a very peculiar setting with other children. And the mystery unfolds of why she grew up the way she did. This is a sad book. It deals with death and dying, but more than that, it deals with complex individuals and their complex relationships. Relationships that almost scar each other throughout their lives. Now, this is not a novel for everyone. It is very slow-paced. It is very introspective. It is filled with a lot of bittersweet melancholy, as Kathy is resigned to being in an unfair and unhappy world. And those few times where she does find hope makes it all that more brighter and yet all that more tragic. I'm probably not selling this book very much, but I did really like the book. And if you're looking for a fast-paced dystopian thriller, stay far away from this novel. But even though this is a science fiction dystopian, it is more of a emotional journey than anything else. And if that appeals to you, that type of character-driven, plot. I think you may really enjoy Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. By the way, my mother, her first name is the female version of Kazuo. Her name was Kazuko. Little interesting Japanese factoid. Next prompt, number 3, fall is back to school season. Share a nonfiction book that taught you something new. In college, I remember reading a textbook called The Irony of Democracy, which kind of stuck with me and is a fairly interesting textbook. And I know it is still taught in colleges today. It was first published in 1970, and every few years it gets revised. I think it's on revision number 17. But the premise of the textbook is that democracy is controlled in the United States is controlled by a group of elites, which are mostly wealthy white men who went to Ivy League schools. Now, maybe the definition of elite has changed. I haven't read the latest edition, but I would hazard to guess it is still mostly white men who go to Ivy League schools. So the premise is that we're not truly a democracy, we're really an oligarchy ruled by a small group of elites that manipulate the system so that their own are in charge. So it is a really fascinating book, and it will certainly challenge your preconceived viewpoints of the United States, at least if you were like me. Prompt 4. In order to keep warm, it is good to spend some time with people we love. Name a fictional family, household, or friend group that you'd like to be a part of. Well, I'm going to say the Heralds of Valdemar by Mercedes Lackey. The Heralds of Valdemar are this utopian group of people. And the reason why this utopian society or community can exist is because each member bonds with a spirit animal in the form of a white horse that sort of guides the heralds and keeps them honest and pure. And the heralds are open and accepting and loving to everyone, even different sexual orientations, which was not often seen in fantasy novels in the 80s. If you've never read a Mercedes Lackey novel, pick up the first one she ever wrote of the Herald of Valdemar, which are Arrows of the Queen. It is a fast-paced, well-plotted novel where you fall in love with the characters and you could really imagine yourself or dream of yourself being part of their community. Prompt 5. The colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. Well, I mostly read ebooks now, but I'll look and see what I can find on my shelves. How about The Long Sun by Gene Wolfe? There's some nice green and gold spine covers on this, and the covers themselves are pretty gorgeous. Prompt number 6. Fall is a perfect time for storytelling by the fireside. Share a book wherein somebody is telling a story. I think one of the ultimate storytelling novels is a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. This is a series of really dark middle grade books. The Beaujolais children are 3 siblings that go through very tragic adventures, and they are continuously suffering. But one of the more unique mechanisms of the writing of this novel is the narrator narrates in the first person, sometimes in the second person, but he is not a main character. In fact, you don't have any idea who he is, except you get little clues as the series progresses, that he is maybe tangentially associated with the story more than you might think. Prompt 7. The nights are getting darker. Share a dark, creepy read. Well, how about The Institute by Stephen King? I mentioned it just because I've recently read it. I'll do a review later. And what I enjoyed about it is it reminded me of some of his early novels. If you are a Stephen King fan, I think you may enjoy it. Number 8, the days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up someone's cold and rainy day. I'm going to suggest Forget-Me-Not by Ellie Terry, which I read for the Book Junkie Trials. Now, this is a middle grade book of poetry, but it tells a story. All the poems together tell a story about a girl with Tourette's syndrome. The story is about a young woman named Calliopeia who starts a new school and befriends a boy next door who is an Asian boy named Jinsong. Now, Jinsong is both attracted to Callie, or Calliopeia, and also embarrassed by her because his friends make fun of her because of her Tourette's. And the poetry is actually poetry interspersed with prose. The poetry is from Callie's point of view, and the prose is from Jinsong's point of view. And it is how they navigate social pressures, family pressures, and their burgeoning friendship. It's ultimately a feel-good story and a very, very fast read. Prompt 9, Fall. Luckily, it's my favorite season, returns every year. Name an old favorite that you'd like to return to soon. Well, I've read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings over and over again, and those are old favorites I pick up. Also, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If I'm ever feeling really depressed, I may pick it up and give it a read. Now, fall is a perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. I'm not sure about this question. The only accessory I can think of is maybe a pile of pillows, because I do enjoy reading at night in bed propped up with a bunch of pillows. And finally, 11. Spread the autumn appreciation and tag some people. I'll tag Victoria the Bookish Sock, I'll tag Bastet of the Teacup Brigade, and I'll tag Nikki from I Read Past My Bedtime. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Until then, may all the books you read be blessed.